imagination is like a very, very hungry animal that always wants to eat, and it's only food, it's only nourishing food is actually experience, and without experience, actually imagination will always remain impoverished and hungry, and it will have very simplistic forms to conjure within itself. So it needs to be fed, with experiences. And now you can ask what experiences or how experiences. And here it's very nice to take this metaphor of culinary, is that not all foods are made equal, and there are certain foods that are made more valuable, more complex, more tasty, more in many qualities that we may think about. So in order to well feed the animal of imagination, it also has to do with the quality of the experience which is being consumed or eaten. And here comes also a function of education, and this connects also to education to excellence, is to be more selective about your experience food. And once you become more selective, and this really does not make any constrictions or constraints, but I think this is a very essential part of education, and it is like complementary to the development of creativity and the imagination, is to be more selective and to develop more qualified taste of what experiences I am feeding on. And I think we all know that there are experiences that can be very well equated to fast food, while other experiences, which are more rare, are more stand in analogy to what we may call gourmet food or gourmet experiences or gourmet, and it's not only, I think that the most important thing is not to feed in this educational context, is not to feed children with gourmet experiences. This is not what I mean. They have to be fed with whatever they like. What they need to be taught is the discriminative faculty that will allow them to develop also by themselves this further and further discriminatory faculty of what kind of experiences they wish to consume and to eat. And by that also their imagination is being enriched in certain ways rather than others. So this is one, and actually the whole idea of excellence, which is very, very well, as I said, I think it was spoken about incessantly. I think it all goes down to this teaching the discrimination having to do, the discriminative faculty having to do with experience, and indirectly with the power of imagination and what it can do, because I do see some very profound correlation between what experiences we consume and our power of imagination to create interesting stuff in our lives. So this is one remark that I wanted to, that came up from what I heard from you, Hervé. Only one, on the downside, there was one sentence that you mentioned, that teachers becomes pupils and pupils become teachers. And on one end, I like it, and I very well understand what you were talking about. On the other hand, one of the first associations that sprang to my mind is the Cultural Revolution in China. That was exactly what was happening, that children will become teachers, patients become surgeons, and surgeons become patients, etc., etc. So we have to keep in to keep in touch with a certain reality while we.
Yeah. I suggested also not to interpret these things in the old communist way.
It's not, yeah, but the thing is when we give our imagination this wings of freedom, as you very well described, okay, it can take us to all sorts of strange places. So somehow we need to be concerned about this as well. Anyway, well, this was just with a smile, yes, but if this association came to my mind, I believe that it came to some other people somewhere. So cannot be that unique in that. So now I have a few minutes, and what I was thinking to use these few minutes for is to say something about time, because this post-industrial whatever, what is the title of this seminar?
You almost have it. Whatever post-industrial workflow.
But in the description of the seminar, there was this idea about workflows. And when I read this idea, the first thing that came to my mind is something that I would call for a moment the objectification of time. And I will try to explain what I mean by that and how it is connected to the seminar. So the objectification of time is something that I believe has roots in antiquity, probably in Greece, in the golden age of Greece, but in order to give it a more contemporary anchor, I would mention Isaac Newton and the kind of physics that Isaac Newton has developed, where one of his more profound inventions that are less apparent in the books and in lessons about physics is the idea of an inertial absolute system of coordinates of space and time. Yes, so actually this idea was definitely used before Isaac Newton, and it was also renewed and re-established and re-elaborated and expanded by Albert Einstein in the 20th century, that actually said that there are no absolute frames of reference. There are only relationships. But the idea that there is a dimension of time that we live inside it, this is what I call This is what I would call, for the purpose of this discussion, objectification of time. It is as if we take time and we place it as some fundamental aspect of our universe. And we say time passes, or we pass in time from one point to another. And there is a very clear analogy between space and time. Okay, we take our cognitive perception of space and we apply it also to time. And this was also augmented by the relativity theory of Einstein, where we do not speak about space and time anymore, but about space-time. And why is this important? Because I don't think this is our mind's work. This is a kind of a comfortable simplification at best. And what I would like to suggest as a complementary or a counter description of what time is and how we can relate to time is that time is a kind of a material, let's say, kind of a substance which is constantly produced by our minds, by our imaginations, by our experiences, by our thoughts, and this like makes the whole relationship of us and time upside down. Instead of us living inside time, it is time which lives or exists or is produced by us. And in this sense, there is no external, absolute, or even relative in this sense, dimension where things are happening, events are happening, or are being enchained with each other. But what we have are events and relationships, very complex relationships between events, which are definitely not linear in any possible sense that we can relate to linearity. And one of the protagonists of this idea was Henri Bergson at the beginning of the 20th century. Along his life, he develops this idea of time, or what he called it in French, durée, which is very different from our idea of time as we educate children to think about time as of today. And he entered a terrible conflict and quarrel with Albert Einstein about the fundamental sense or the fundamental meaning of what time is. And unfortunately, he miserably failed in this quarrel or this conflict, and Einstein was the winner for many reasons that are not important here and now. But this was something which is really, in some sense, it was a tragic philosophical accident or a catastrophe, if you would like, because a lot of things that we see today in our psychological construct about how we relate to time and how we make educational plans or life plans or relational plans between humans, it all starts with a certain linearization and objectification of time, as if this is something real and not itself a product of our own minds and the way that we experience life, environment, etc. And I don't think that this objectification is something which is wrong, as long as it does not start to become the guiding principle of how we organize our minds and how we organize our interrelationships, and especially human relationships. But just minutes before I started to speak, I was thinking, okay, to what extent what I would say will make sense. And I don't know if you know, my basic education is in engineering, electrical engineering, and I spent a few years designing computer systems and electronic systems, etc., where you have signals and you have timings of signals, etc. And it seems that the objectification of time is just essential to such technological occupations. And somebody would come, okay, we use Zoom now, we use our cellular devices, etc. Without the objectification of time, these technologies could not exist. And I beg to differ. This is exactly not the case, because you can engineer computers and computing devices and smartphones and spacecrafts, etc., as while relating to time, not as a dimension which is external to us, but as a set of complex relationships between events. And I think, or I want to suggest that this relationship with time, which is also connected to the way that our imagination works and the way that our cognition works in relation to both imagination and actual experience, is that time is something else. Time is a material that we produce, and we produce it via the processing of experience, of the workings of our imaginations, and many other things. And it is this material that we live. It's part of our lives, actually. And I believe that if we could offer such understanding to young generations, it might be a beginning of solving a very profound issue or a problem having to do with this linearization and externalization, objectification of time. So this was more or less the remark that I wanted to contribute to
A
this
question,
hearing.
if I can, how does a human being produce time? How does it happen?
The easiest way to answer it is just by being alive. Yes, by being alive. And in order to make it a bit more simplified, and not to test the boundaries of this idea, it's that time is produced. I would say for us, it's a function of our consciousness, of our conscious awareness. And this is something that is being also correct to animals other than humans, because all living beings have certain rhythms and sequences of events that are necessitated by the very continuation of existence of what we call autopoiesis. So they have a more simplified kind of that matter that I call time. While us humans, since we possess both consciousness and also linguistic abilities, you know, that I will not enter into it, but I can also relate to the function of language in forming and consolidating our experiences. But definitely our conscious awareness and our linguistic abilities are adding new novel qualities to the stuff being produced as what we call the stream of consciousness or the stream of experience, which I want to in a very large sense, equate with this material that I call time. So if I am looking inside, if I'm looking inside into my own stream of consciousness, I am observing time being produced. Just like that. And this can also be a suggested item or topic for meditation, and in the East, but not only in the East, people were always interested in this idea of stopping thinking, to stop thinking. And stopping thinking is no other than stopping time itself. And if you try for even a moment now to close your eyes and try to imagine the time does not exist. Yes, but while imagining the time does not exist, you create time by this imagination. So in order to really imagine that time does not exist, you have also to stop this imagining of non-existing time. And this becomes a bit more challenging in our, so it's almost inevitable that we create time while being alive or while being conscious. And I think that I remember one experience that I had just many years ago. I underwent an appendix operation, etc. This was the only occasion in my life that I had what is called total anesthesis when you are doing an operation. And one of the things that were so striking about it is that I could not possibly have any registration of any passage of time from the moment that I were put to anesthetized to the moment that I woke up. It was, and immediately after this striking experience, my brain started to produce backward a story. You have been in an operation and a few hours, and I looked at my watch and I saw that a few hours have passed, etc., etc. And there was a whole story, a whole fabrication about the time that existed as if outside of my mind. But this is a confabulation of the. This is an obvious confabulation, because for me at that moment time stopped. Now, even this is not that simple, because I was alive, and being alive means that certain rhythms have continued over and above my conscious, the conscious dimension of the time that I'm producing. And in this sense, time did continue, obviously, and this was the continuation of my biology, of my biological existence. So I
Yeah,
hope it answers. It starts to answer your question.
Yeah, and you also mentioned interrelation between the events. So you were out, but others were producing times and moving the clocks, you know, and then they updated you when you woke up. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, and it becomes even more interesting when we create a relationship with other humans, which is not based on this objectified dimension of time, like meetings, Zoom meetings, me talking, you are listening, you are talking, I am listening, etc. But we create some an experiential or imaginational ground to an exchange, and then for a while, intermittently or continuously, we create a time which belongs to our relationship and not to any one of us in particular. And this becomes even more interesting because we now see that instead of time being linear, we have this idea of this line coming from the past to the present to the future, which is really shamefully simplistic to the way that we exist and the way that we think. And we see that the time being produced is an extremely complex monster, or
Yeah.
it can be a nice monster, yes, but I call it a monster because really it does not answer easily any organizational understandings. And
Yeah,
so
maybe.
it's in some sense it's monstrous. It's a philosophically monstrous, not otherwise. But it's an interesting thing to post-industrial flows. I think it's somehow connected. Now I hope that you see the connection as well, or it's not just my figure of my wandering imagination.
I would like to make maybe an obvious connection between this quality of experience and the fact that like the time is like moment by moment produced by our existence, and then if you apply this question of taste to it or development of taste, the quality of moments will be produced can be like it's something, it's actually something to be like to be put attention to in terms of education, yes, to developing this taste relative to that, like what kind of moments do you want to produce. And it's not necessarily that like the quantity of them is more important than the quality of them. Maybe let's have one meeting, but like once a year, but something that will make the year for us. Yes, then spending 8 hours and studying, basically like not living in the time in any perceptible way, you know, because the time is gone and nothing has really happened. Yeah.
Yes, ironically, I think we have probably American produced term called quality time. So what does it mean, quality time, in this sense? I want to spend with someone quality time. It's definitely withdrawing from this objectified, externalized time and creating a ground having to do with our subjectivity, with our psyche, if you wish.
There's something to be said about time. It's a very intriguing question that you're asking, because we are all talking about, when you talk about new forms of education, we often talk, and I hear myself speaking about it, I hear Hervik speaking about it, about passion and about imagination, and it's very difficult to combine that with time systems in a certain way. So there's no, you can't connect time with passion or time with imagination.
But you connect time with budget.
You connect. Yes. Yeah, but the intriguing part is that there's such a huge difference between what Martha wrote in her introduction, like we have 1 hour mathematics and we have 1 hour physics and we have 1 hour that and 1 hour that, and the difference between this concept and having a concept where passion is important, where timelessness is or we are attentive to timelessness, where this imagination is important. It's a complete different approach towards going from one step to another, and it's way more fluid, and that intrigues me a lot in new educational formats. So I like the idea of this time, of the question of questioning time, the idea of questioning time.
Okay, I think there is in relation to this time the possibility to create an environment where this different relation to time overcomes you, and I think it has to do with with the question what Gees was talking about the excellence and the grades, and also what Herwig was talking about. I think they all fit together in a sense that the matter of the grades has to do with the ranking, and ranking has nothing to do with what we call connection and being moved. It has to do with power, and it is a world where the individual is a center of the universe. And I think our educational model, which is based on imagining the future, is then we move to another worldview, another identity. We move to the we, where what also Lotte was telling about, what Kaufman is telling about this ship moving on the sea, where we have the growth needs that are the security needs, safety and connection and self-esteem, and when they are provided, then people start really to grow and become more explorative and loving and discovering their purpose. So when we connect in this sense of we enter what I call a generative field. And in this generative field, the future becomes known to you. You blend into the future, and I think it's very important to in our educational environment, where we really want people to learn, that we try to reach this point of this kind of isomorphism, where the personal self-actualization and the fact that you transcend the knowledge and those egocentric goals that have to do with excellence and grades, but where you blend into the intelligence of the whole. That's the moment where the future becomes known to you, and where time is changing in quality. And it's, for me, it's the matter how to create this generative field with those students, so we can develop this intelligence of this field, where not only the field develops, but also those who take part of it. And then whether it is a student or a teacher, it doesn't matter anymore. You connect to something that is beyond yourself, but that has to do with the passion for life that Herwig was talking about. So you have to give in to something, and to be able to do that, you have to create a space where safety and connection is the base. That's what I think. That's very important. And then you can overcome this absolute or how system of time. Then you come connected to this kairos time, the Greek concept of time. So that's what I wanted to add. And I think it's very important that we try to address this dimension in the way we model the experience of the students in this Buckminster College. I have spoken.
Yeah, the idea is enormously intriguing, because what we are doing with Sasha and Herwig and the team that's creating this Buckminster experience in Bruges, we are actually doing the same time. We are altering time in a certain way. We dive into another universe, and therefore also in another way of time experience. So it can go slow down, it can go faster. We seem to be able, and I think Herwig is the best character for that, or the best person with the best character for that, in changing the time experience during that experience, and that's interesting.
And I think you can only do that when you quit the idea of grades, of ranking.
Yeah, it's also what is interesting. It's taking, and if you're like when Sasha is talking to the faculty members, and if I am talking to the faculty members, we always talk about sharing the path, and we're taking these children, these pupils, on a path the moment that the path opens itself. So it's really an explorative way of thinking, and it's going away from classic hierarchies, teacher students, and it's more like exploring together, and I'm learning from them and they're learning from me, and vice versa. I'm very thankful for the time concept, Weaver. It's a very intriguing idea.
The time concept. It is. Marta?
It's been a long time since my high school physics, which I hated. So it's very intriguing for me to hear if this was the sort of physics I learned in high school. I may be in a different place today. And I won't have very good words to describe this, but in what you're hearing, in what you're saying, I'm hearing something about the quality of this experience, right? You talked about curating or choosing your experience. That was very powerful for me. That it doesn't seem like it's the what in the experience, but it's the how in the experience. And when you're talking about the college, it's the how, right? It's how you come alongside. It's how, it's not a ranking, it's not a grading, it's really this coming alongside of. And that's something I'd like to explore more of, that we in the West seem to be obsessed with the what, we seem to be obsessed with structures and aims, where it's really the how that seems to be decisive for where we get to. And it's a thought I'm obsessed with these days. And I'm hearing it, I don't know if it's coming from me or if it's really a thread here as well, but it fascinates me.
Well, what is the difference between how and what? Isn't it the matter of framing, that any how can be described as what and any what as how?
Is it a general question or for Marta?
I don't know. General?
You're asking me a very big question at a time when my children's structuring of their experience is, you know, they've been taught this discriminatory faculty of wanting their mother, and I'm hearing them scratching at the door.
Okay, I take the question back. Forget about it.
So thank you all so much. It was a very thought-provoking evening. I have to respond to the scratching now.
Yeah, I understand. And we are already at the end, so we'll be closing anyhow. Thanks, man. Yeah, bye.
But Marta, it's an intriguing question with the what, and the how.
So what do you think? Because isn't it okay? It's always like in a particular case, it's clear, you know, like the, you know, cooking pasta. There is the how of, like, I don't know, like what is the how of cooking? Okay, but the thing is the pasta. Yes, but it's also like you can describe the same what by how, but just a different granulation of what we are. I think. But
I don't, from personally, I mean, I can only say from a personal experience, I don't think that the what is important. I'm way more getting enriched from the how.
so okay, so I will be cooking while, like, I will be singing while cooking, but like what I cook, it also will matter, no? So,
yeah, but it depends on the path you're walking on during the cooking. It's not important to cook.
okay, I think that relative to a particular case, you can say that, but I think it's all like more abstractly. This is the question of framing, because you can reframe anything as what or how. Yeah.
I can say something about it. The what and the how.
Yeah.
I think it's both a very complex and very simple question. Imagine, since I was using this this metaphor of food, there is this what is called fast food, called McDonald's. Now, is it or is it not the case that if I want experience of higher quality, I have to refrain from eating McDonald's from time to time? I say no. This is not this is entirely not the case of what I try to say about it. Of course, you can go and have as many McDonald's as you like. However, this is more belongs to the what. You can do anything. The how is how you relate it or how you place it in relation to a wider horizon of experiences. Being able to both use your individual preferences as a kind of a compass, but also being able to overcome and go beyond your individual preferences in order to recognize and cultivate and build scales of appreciation which are not uniquely based on your personal preferences alone. And if you are able to do this, of course, street food is wonderful. McDonald's is a kind of a fast food, street food, etc. But even on the scale of street food, if you go all over the world and you try to experiment with, you see that even in this category of fast food, it's pretty lousy. Now, you can adore eating McDonald's, and there is nothing wrong about it. There is nothing wrong about it. It's only just the how is just being able to tell the difference of what am I eating now, and how it reflects on a wider cognitive complex process of, like what I said, producing time, qualifying experiences, etc. I hope that this makes it a bit more tangible, this how and what distinction.
Yeah. It applied to the context of what you are speaking. Yes. Verne, you wanted to speak?
Yeah. That is a question that fascinates me for years already, and I have a deep intuition that the what and the how are deeply interwoven. So when you do something in the what, let's say that for me the what is the content and the how is the form, how you create this content. And even in what you are doing, eating McDonald's, you you create how the world will organize itself. So in what you are doing, you are also reinforcing the how. And I think that our focus on the what makes that sometimes we stop thinking about how creative it can be to start in the angle of the how. And that when we start in the how, we create another content, another what.
Yeah.
And I don't know how it works, but it is in language, in thinking, in doing, it is so interwoven, and we neglect the fact that we can reshape the content by reshaping the form.
Yeah, I would suggest that like basically all existence like is applicable by the how, and where we speak about forms that we relate to what, this is the like linguistic vehicle of compressing parts of processes into a kind of mental objects, which become more like kind of like bits of information already compressed, but you can decompose it into a lot of processes which each is happening somehow. Yes, and you can, and but because it's like it's not the focus, then we compress them into the what's, and then where we pay attention, we approach it processually, and then the matter of the choice how to go about it.
Maybe that's the essence of what teaching can be, is asking questions about the how.
Yeah, so like it would be like going into each thing, yes, and so and showing how it goes around this way.
What you do in coaching and in psychotherapy and teaching, it is the process of opening up by changing the process, by changing the how. So the what transforms.
This is what I meant with the importance of the how rather than the what, because the what seems very goal oriented, and deciding on what the what is already emphasizes the how in a certain way.
That's the dominance of the result and not of the process. Huh? Mm-hmm.
Just with the how and without deciding on what the what could be. I think the process will be way more enriching and way more interesting than and maybe we end up at McDonald's. I love McDonald's every now and then.
On this note, I suggest it's time to close the meeting for today. It was fun.